Okay, Sawyer Hamilton, welcome to the people of Utah.
Happy to be here, James.
Good man. Hey, so why don't we start with where you're from? I think you're a Utah native from what I.
Hmm.
Okay, awesome. So where were you born and where are you at now?
So I was born and raised in Spanish Fork, and of course, I'm still in Spanish Fork.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Spanish Fork is the best city. Why are you still in Spanish Fork?
I mean, my job's there, family's there. I'm like, just a great place to be.
Spanish Fork is the best. So I kind of want to get into a couple of things here. One thing I know about you is that you are super big into city planning and urban development, and you have
Mm.
strong opinions on all that stuff. When did you start caring so much about that?
So, I mean, like, it really started years ago. I mean, this all kind of relates back to being on the spectrum. People with autism always find something they're passionate about. And, like, my passion has always been trains. And the more I look back at it, it's so funny how trains come back to touch so many areas that I'm interested in.
Interesting.
But I mean, growing up on the spectrum, you kind of like you nourish those interests, and so like I was always like, oh well, like how's this connected? How does this work with it? And when it came down to it, it started probably my senior year. I went on a trip to Washington D.C. with my class, and we had a chance to ride the DC Metro, and I was just like mystified. I'm like the idea of everything being in walking, biking, or just like everything is at your fingertips practically. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's like a superpower. I mean, who wouldn't want to walk out their door and be only like 10 minutes away from their favorite grocery store or their favorite like stores? And I mean, and you could take the train anywhere. You can go to sports, you can go to work, other entertainment. I mean, again, it's a superpower because I mean, no one had to drive everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what stunned me. I mean, again, going back to being on the spectrum, like driving sucks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it sucks. And I mean, if I lived in the middle of nowhere, like I don't know if it'd be that much different to me, but being in an urban area like we are and how much it's grown, driving is the worst thing I can imagine. So like I can't go very far driving. So I'm like, but if there's a bus or a train, sign me up.
Love that. Okay. So maybe we should start with that then. You being on the spectrum. When were you diagnosed with autism and tell us about your experiences growing up?
So I was diagnosed pretty early and I was lucky in that regard. Because I mean, most people on the spectrum, like some of the initial testing now can find it as early as like 18 months. But when I was diagnosed, it was still fairly new, like at least on people's radars. Like people had seen it increasingly during the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, which I was about 4 when they diagnosed me, so about 2001.
Okay.
So, I mean, they diagnosed me, but the thing that was rough at the time was people didn't understand what the implications of that really meant. So
Hmm.
like we had all these specialists like really like come down hard on my parents and be like, "Oh, he's not going to read, he won't write, he's not going to make it through school, not have social connections." They're like, "Just take him home and love him." So they're like, basically he's a potato. Just take him home and love him.
Wow. This was when you were 4. They told your parents this.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. And of course my parents were not going to have that.
Yeah.
So they, and seriously respect to them and respect to my family in general, because they probably are scarred and aged well beyond their years because of me. But they took me out as often as they could on adventures and just tried to kind of acclimate me to the world. So like, um, more that I could look outside my own like little tendencies and stuff, but like also like enjoy the world around me.
Mm.
Um, because I mean, if they really had just like shut me up somewhere and just like these professionals told them at the time, like just sit him in front of the TV and just love him, like I would basically be a vegetable. I wouldn't understand how to be out and doing things, but like here I am, I'm
Yeah.
almost 28. I work full time, um, good at my job. I go to church. I served a mission. Um,
Well, yeah, and like they said these things about you in school or whatever, but you went to public school and you got your degree. You did
mm,
great on your tests and stuff. Like that's
oh,
pretty cool.
exactly. So like, like in high school, I mean, like junior high was a drag, of course, and it's rough for everybody.
Yeah.
But like in high school, like I was like on student council, like student body officer my senior year. I was a two-time regional debate champion in
Yeah.
speech and debate and high honor student and everything. So I mean, like I had a great opportunity, and I mean, beyond like my family, I'm like I had a great community around me. Like that's also why I like Spanish Fork. Like
Yeah.
people were like were fast to embrace me and like what made me me.
That's good. And I feel like a lot of times, if someone's autistic, it's, I don't know, like a lot of people generally won't embrace, and I'm sure it can be like hard in school with
Mm.
kids are cruel, whatever. But I don't know, like it seems I didn't even know you had autism until you like told me after I worked with you for like months. I'm like, you mentioned it in passing. I'm like, oh, I didn't know you had autism. That's a
Yeah.
lot. Like, I just thought you were a genius, bro. But dude, I don't know what it is. I feel like every autistic person has like a superpower that they have to discover at some point in their life. There's like people who can like play crazy piano or memorize crazy things. Like everybody has some sort of superpower they gotta tap into at some point. For you, your big like fixation thing is the city planning and
Mhm.
urban development, that kind of stuff. Is that what you think, or do you think
Oh
just
yeah.
okay?
Because I mean, like like I said, like all people with autism end up having a lot of interest, and I mean, like, and I'm not saying this is a fact. There's a lot of evidence pointing towards like a lot of like the greatest like men and women in history also being on the spectrum
Yeah,
because they displayed behaviors that are consistent with autism.
yeah,
So they're like founding fathers, great inventors, all these like major people in history were probably autistic too, which I mean would make sense. But I mean, like all of us have things that we're great at, and I mean
yeah,
like, and I saw that even on my mission. I mean, my mission was at church headquarters, and most of the missionaries were on the spectrum or they had other oh my goodness, I don't know what, I don't want to call them mental illness, but just like they just had other health things at play,
okay,
and like they all had areas that they excelled in. I mean, we had
yeah,
missionaries who were just fantastic at math. I'm like, they're good tech wise. I'm like, everyone really has something they're really good at. It's just in a situation like that, it's almost like we're making up for something that we struggle in. Because I mean, like social situations, like I can tolerate, but like you get me in a room trying to figure out a problem or like looking at like diagrams, I'm piecing information together like there's nobody's business.
right, right, very cool. Yeah, I don't know why I've always just thought of autism as like people with autism just have some part of their brain unlocked. I mean, I've
Mm-hmm.
heard that like, we're not using all of our brain or whatever, but like I feel like people with autism, like you said, these great people in history and stuff before we had a word for it, just had some piece of their brain unlocked like that. So that's way cool. How has it been both like a blessing and a curse for you, you think, growing up with autism? What are some of the great things about it and some of the bad things that have come with it?
Okay, like going with the positives first, like I think it gives me a unique perspective on the world. Um, because again, like I'm looking at things a lot different than most people do. And so like of course that's also kind of the double-edged sword there. Like other
Mm-hmm.
people will look at something and be like and see it completely different than me. But I mean, I'm also okay standing out because I'm going to stand out whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
So I just mean I like having a unique perspective of the world and also, you know, being not a lot of people on the spectrum just also aren't afraid to express their opinions, which I'm also glad about too. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh yeah.
there's things that have to be said every now and then. Um, I will say I've worked very hard on my filter.
Oh, I think
The
you've done a great job. Oh yeah,
the
dude. I know when you like will when we were working together, you'd come to me and you like say something under your breath, and I'm like, oh man, like, because you have to get it out, but you
Mhm.
can't like I don't know roast people all the time like you want to. Like I know you've got things on your mind that you're like, oh my gosh, I want to get it out so
It's just like,
bad.
and I mean, like, and I've gotten gradually better and like more patient with people. And I mean, and that's one of the biggest struggles with being on the spectrum too is there's just kind of a lack of patience
Mhm.
there and also a reluctance to change. But again, over in my case specifically, um, I feel like it's gotten milder over time. So like I still have my little quirks and stuff, but I mean, over time I've gotten a lot. They've been moderated, like I can function. But at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, everyone leave me alone. I'm
Yeah.
going into my room, I'm reading a book, I'm drawing, like everyone just leave me alone.
Love that. So tell me about your mission a little bit. I know you served like a long mission and it was
Mhm.
at church headquarters. Tell us what you did, what it was like, how long you served, all that stuff.
So my mission was actually a very unique, bizarre, just like fantastic kind of, and I shouldn't call it an adventure, but in the end, that's what it kind of ended up
There's
being.
nothing wrong calling it an
Well,
adventure. It
yeah,
definitely
I
was.
just mean, so I ended up serving two missions back to back. So I did my 2 year stint as a service missionary, and then because I was working on some major projects up at church headquarters, they asked me to extend as a senior missionary. So for a time, I was like the youngest senior missionary in the church.
Nice.
And it was very bizarre because people would hear senior missionary and they'd see me come around the corner.
You're like
And
24, 25,
exactly.
you're like,
And they're just like, that? I'm like, yeah, that's me. Like, and stuff. And so, I mean, it was really a great opportunity. I mean, I started out in the publishing department and on the missionary team, and I got into like project coordination, a little bit of bookkeeping, notes, and stuff. Like, I was really an administrative assistant, and that's what I ended up doing most of my mission was a lot of the administrative side of things. But then they started having me do like more project coordination, and I started doing it for multiple departments. Um,
Mhm.
Mostly because my work had to reach across most departments where I was at, anyways.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I was helping with new employees, I was training new missionaries, and then also doing like audits and project management for several major projects across the church. Of course, I can't go into most of them,
Right. Highly classified.
highly classified, but I mean, I got access to just a lot of just great things happening in the church. I mean, I love the church and I love seeing all of the projects they're undertaking. The Temple Square renovations was a big one that I helped with. And so,
Oh, really? That was
oh
like
yeah.
that was way before it started though.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm like, it was like, um, and of course, again, I can't go into many of the specifics, but I
Yeah.
mean, they brought me onto it and they weren't quite clear at the beginning, but once I completed certain tasks, they gradually trusted me with more and stuff. And that was kind of like the story of the service missionaries that I served with. Like, they gave us very basic beginnings, which I mean, anybody would. I'm like, we were a bunch of basically high school, some of us had some college experience, just, I hate saying it like this, but basically young punks showing up at, you know, the headquarters of one of the like biggest, like fastest growing churches in the world. And I'm sure they're just kind of like, can we really trust all these kids? But I mean, we really changed a lot of people's minds. And so, of course, like I do believe in, I believe in God and like a higher power, you know?
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I think that was his way of not only helping us, like helping these people like learn like understanding and like um help like expose them to just like different ideas of how to look at things,
Yeah.
but like also like gave all of us missionaries a purpose because a lot of us were either we went straight in as service missionaries because our health issues or um you know, they limited what we could do. I mean, they looked at me and they're like, okay, he has no filter. That was probably the biggest
We
thing.
can't put him in front of a microphone.
And no, no, no. And they're like, and also just like my general anxiety, I'm like, no, I can't knock on strangers' doors and be like, hey, come to church with us.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not my thing. But, but I mean, but you put me in like an office setting, like I thrive. It was fantastic.
Dope.
So I mean, and then the other half of the missionaries I served with, these were people who had like gone out into the mission field, like teaching, and then had health complications or things arose that brought them home early. And so like a lot of them were like devastated until they got a chance to come serve at church headquarters or in the other fields. I mean,
Very cool.
when we started, it was tiny and it just exploded afterwards. I
Very
mean,
cool.
it's night and day now to what I was with.
I Love that, man.
Yeah.
Okay. What was it like? I mean, I just imagine it'd be way cool because you're going to downtown Salt Lake City.
Mhm.
You're going like up the elevator, like the tallest building in Utah. You probably felt like that was cool. So did you do that like full time, like every day?
Oh yeah. So I mean, I
Awesome.
was there at least probably pretty close to 40 hours a week. So I went there 4 weekdays. So I'd work like Wednesday and Saturday at my job. So I mean, I was allowed to hold my job. They can't do that anymore, but I still worked 2 days a week. I had Sunday off, and then I was at church headquarters. And some weeks, like if we had a lot of meetings going on, I would be there every day of the week.
That's
So I
so cool.
mean, there were times where I pulled a lot of hours, a lot of work for the church, and I mean, it was worth every second.
That's awesome, man. So kind of switching gears, I want to hear more about your thoughts on city planning type of stuff. What are
Mm.
some things like for Spanish Fork, best city in Utah, in my opinion and your opinion? What are some things that you think should happen and should change to make it more, I don't know. Do you understand what I'm trying to
Oh
say?
yeah.
Make it more, what's the word? A walkable city
Hmm.
to help it grow.
I would guess probably more like sustainable.
Sustainable is a
I
great
guess.
word. Yeah.
I mean, okay. I'm like, and I have to, and it's hilarious how some people react to some of the words you use, because the big word that I find triggers people the most is density, and everyone loses their mind because
In what context density? As in like a bunch of like multifamily homes stacking people up. Okay,
exactly.
okay.
And so the problem is that a lot of people, they hear the word density, and even though there's really a spectrum of density, they see two options. They're thinking there's either going to be skyscrapers or like high rises of some sort, or they're thinking like a house on each acre, a house on like one house per acre,
Hmm.
which on both ends of the spectrum aren't quite as sustainable as people think. When you have people in low density sprawl, you are actually stretching infrastructure out more, and it costs more to maintain, and you're also making people drive further. So you're actually increasing the traffic and the dependency on private vehicles.
Mm.
On the other end, if you're stacking people into skyscrapers, they're less resilient to disasters, one. So, like
Mm.
in New York, when they had Superstorm Sandy years ago, the first buildings that were reoccupied after the superstorm were buildings that were only up to about 8 floors high, like within weeks.
Hmm.
It took months or even years for the skyscrapers to be repopulated. And it's also just unpleasant, and it's really hard on the human mind to constantly be surrounded by very like behemoth buildings. Like there's so many things that go into city planning. It's not just about making a city function well, it's about actually making it appear well too. So like
Interesting.
the human scale matters. Like when people, and this was something I worked on a bit with church headquarters too. Like that's one of the reasons they're removing the wall around Temple Square and replacing it with um, wrought iron fencing. Um, People can see in. Like transparency is a key aspect of making any urban environment better. So like if people are walking along a sidewalk, they want to like see in. Like they want to see activity. They want to see like storefront windows.
Hmm.
They want activity, like to see things are lively and bustling and stuff. And people inside can like see out to the street and see what's going on there. It reduces crime. It just looks appealing. And I mean, so many of our favorite places, like around the world, are just like that. I'm sorry, everyone like goes to Disneyland or Disney World and they go down Main Street in those places and
Yeah,
they're like,
it's a
"Oh,
great
it's
point.
just so charming. It's so." They're like, "You can just walk to whatever one of these shops you want." I'm like, "Well, why don't you want that here?"
Yeah,
I'm like, why wouldn't we want that everywhere we go?"
yeah.
And but like I bring up density mostly because people panic when they hear about it, and they think of those two extremes on the spectrum, but that's not what we are looking at here, especially like here in Utah. I mean, the hilarious thing is when I ask people this all the time because when I found it out, it floored me. If you had to guess where the densest square mile in Utah is, where would you say it is?
Like most densely populated?
Yes.
I would guess like I don't know, downtown Salt Lake City.
Nope. It's in Provo. The
Oh,
densest square mile is in Provo.
oh, because of
There's
all the student housing, you think? The
not
two
exactly.
colleges? Okay.
If you look at the square mile around the Provo City Library, even though some of it is student dorms, it is the most densely populated square mile in Utah. But it's not populated with high rises. It's dominantly mid rise and low rise apartment buildings.
Mhm.
A lot of them can blend in even to like a mixed housing neighborhood, basically, in any city across the country. Density can hide in plain sight, and people really underestimate like how much of a difference it actually makes. Um, and I get where people come from too, but it's a lot of it just comes back to our overdependence on the car.
Yeah.
You make a really dense area, and you don't have it next to services, shopping, like transportation methods.
Right.
You're just going to have a traffic mess. And China is discovering that because they're doing something known like we do, like the urban, like low density sprawl. China does high density. So they build these massive, like towering communities out in the middle of nowhere, and they just link it by highway into the nearest major city. So
Mm.
they just create traffic nightmares. So this is really about going back to how our ancestors used to set up our cities. They would design everything to be walkable,
Yeah.
or their streets are public space, but our ancestors treated them like public space better than we did because everyone could use them. People who were walking, biking, um, horse-drawn wagons, or the streetcar, or even full-on trains that just went down the middle of the street.
Hmm.
And they treated it as a public way. And then the car came along, and we started taking out aspects
Yeah. It's
of our
almost like
streets.
it's like I don't know, our cities and street like it kind of revolves around cars and stuff. I never
Hmm.
thought about that. How things were looking before cars, how city planning went and building, and then after cars, it's kind of all revolved around the car. Have you thought of this though, Sawyer? One more lane.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah.
joking. I
No.
think that might solve every traffic problem you can think of, dude. One more lane. What do you think?
Every time I hear that, I just cringe because in reality, adding more space for cars actually makes the traffic worse. It will never solve it.
Oh, I know. I only learned about that for the first time like years ago when I saw you post something about
Yeah.
it. I remember I was like, I've learned everything that I know, which is very little about city planning from you, bro, and from what you post and stuff. And like Spanish Fork, I mean, it's happening. Like Spanish Fork growing like crazy, but tons of cities in Utah. I know a couple of years ago, for a while, Vineyard was like the fastest growing city in like America.
Hmm.
So like, it's not just Spanish Fork. Lots of cities in Utah growing like crazy. How do we manage the growth? Right, that's where city planning comes in, and it's
Hmm.
super super important. And I don't really know much about that area, but a lot of things I see you talking about is okay. We got to get more public transportation and have
Hmm.
dedicated lane for that. A
Hmm.
biking lane, like I don't know, like you said, make it less independent vehicle
Hmm.
dependent. Is that how you're
Exactly.
describing it,
I'm like,
right?
because like, and here's what I also have to say about this. Like, I understand not everyone will use transit, and not everyone will want to bike or walk everywhere. But the reality is, the more options you provide, the better the system is. It's better for resiliency.
Mhm.
It's better for development. I'm like, and it's better for the public health. Like people who use
Sure.
transit, walking, and biking are um, 90% of them who do it on a daily basis basically get the recommended daily level of like physical activity. And I'm like, every time I look back at it, like our obesity and like overweight, like weight management issues didn't start coming about until after we became very dependent on cars and fast food.
Yeah, spent a lot of hours sitting in our
Mhm.
car and driving through a drive-through to get our food. Yeah,
Exactly. And
interesting.
like the housing crisis didn't start until we started building sprawling suburbs instead of building a mix of housing because we made laws that restricted what kind of housing and the kind of development we could have in our cities. I'm like, it all comes back to an overdependence on cars. And people don't even like understand. They'll complain about parking, but they forget that that parking is very underutilized. Like most of the time, most parking lots are never full. They might get up to 60%, and then maybe 3 or 4 times a year they get completely full.
Yeah.
That's a complete waste of real estate, especially in our major cities. Like downtown Salt Lake City, unfortunately, like almost a third of the area that's designated as downtown is devoted just to surface parking, which
Wow.
it really shouldn't be. And they are changing that. And I mean,
Cool.
when I first started my mission, there were parking lots everywhere, but most of them now have been, a lot of them have been turned into apartment complexes there, or new office buildings, like new restaurants. I'm like, it brings new life to a city.
Totally.
Adding parking does not bring life into a city. People park there and then they go inside a very boring building that's typically designed for people driving a car. It's not a vibrant urban building.
I like
And
that.
then that's kind of it. But it also just fuels, our cities cannot pay for the infrastructure that they're building because of the way that we're currently developing. The sprawling, low density development cannot pay for all the infrastructure needs of a city. And so we're basically digging ourselves into a giant hole of debt. In fact, by 2028, the National Highway Fund is going to be over $300 billion in debt. The only way they can save us is if they take the federal gas tax and triple it.
Huh.
So gas taxes aren't paying for our roads anymore. They are part of the equation, and then we pay it in many other ways. So in reality, I have to laugh when people point out like other methods of transportation don't pay for themselves. Cars are actually the worst performer in that regard, because in
Interesting.
when you look at how much the public has to pay to sustain a certain service or a certain infrastructure, it's really wide. So for every dollar that someone spends walking, the public only spends $1, so it equals out. For biking, it's like 9 cents. For a bus ride, it's like $1.15. A car is like $9. So
It's like, yeah, it's several times, what's the word? Several times more, yeah. Then
mhm.
that's crazy.
And so I mean, and of course I laugh because I tell people this, and like, why do you know this? I'm like, just let me be a nerd for a minute, okay? Just
This
just
is
let
what
me.
excites me, okay?
And
So tell me about the Rio Grande plan.
ah,
I've seen stuff on social media. All I know is that it's some sort of train type of thing, and it's something you're a big fan of, and I see a lot of people on social media actually are big fans of it too.
mhm.
I don't know. What's it about?
Okay, so the Rio Grande project
Oh, Rio
is,
Grande, my bad.
oh yeah, you're all good. The Rio Grande plan. Okay, so um, these engineers who live up in Salt Lake City, great guys by the way. So they see that split that is created by a combination of I-15 and the railroads, that has split Salt Lake City basically in half. So you have the west side, which historically, and like this is sad too, like the way that we've zoned and built our infrastructure literally pushed people apart based on race, social class, um, and like economic status and everything. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah, I've heard that phrase, like growing up on the other side of the tracks or
exactly.
whatever.
And
Okay.
so like the west side dominantly was industrial, with significant neighborhoods that are home to like the majority of the city's like immigration populations, um like Hispanic Americans, African Americans. A lot of them got pushed onto that side because of how the city developed originally. And then the east side stayed a lot wealthier and stayed predominantly commercial and residential. But anyways, the Rio Grande plan, when they built the front runner line, which by the way, love front runner. That's how I got to my mission every day. But they removed the original tracks and moved them further west because they wanted to stimulate development on the western edge of downtown. But it never took off, mostly because where Salt Lake Central Station currently stands, it's just not very it's not very accessible to the rest of downtown.
Yeah, you got to like get onto the green line or whatever
The blue
other little
line.
tracks, blue line tracks,
Yeah.
trains. Yeah.
And it's just very out of the way. But when you compared it to what Salt Lake, where the tracks originally were, they ran to the Rio Grande Depot. And the Rio Grande Depot is a 10-minute walk from the new entertainment district being built around the convention center and the Delta Center. It's within a 15-minute walk of the financial district on Main Street. I mean, you can access basically the very heart and soul of this state within a 15-minute walk for the Rio Grande Depot. So what their plan is, and again, these guys are engineers, so like they looked through this and it's very well thought out and everything, but they are wanting to Fifth West, I'm pretty sure that's the road, yes, Fifth West, that runs there by the depot is so wide, it can fit tracks underneath it. So they're talking about taking the street, basically peeling it back, and then putting tracks under the street.
Oh, so the Rio Grande plan also has to do with subway integration.
More or less, it's more like a trench. It's more like more a trench than anything.
Okay.
But they would cap it with like parks and like revitalized streets, and the end goal would be that we could have Frontrunner, Amtrak, and other rail lines running underneath Fifth West through downtown. So the good thing with that is that would they could tear out the rail lines that are currently there. Most of them are underutilized anyways. They would tear them out, which would open the area up for redevelopment. And then, I mean, those crossings there are also just very dangerous, and they get blocked all the time by slow freight trains.
Yeah.
And I feel bad. I mean, having not lived there, like I don't know personally how much people have suffered with that, but I've seen the videos.
Yeah,
and
same.
people have timed them. Some of those trains have sat at those crossings
Yeah.
for over half an hour.
Yeah,
and
I've
they're
seen the exact
legally
same.
not allowed to, but no one holds them accountable for it. And this is about removing that traffic out of that realm, allowing redevelopment of that area so they could patch back together the city right there, and just like it would basically reunify the city through that corridor. And it also paves the way for better rail services, because as it currently stands, those crossings are a big limitation on how frequent and how fast trains can operate. And it also just makes their reliability really questionable. If a vehicle breaks down there, if there's unfortunately any pedestrian incidents there, it messes up the service for the entire line. So, I mean,
Okay. So with this Rio Grande plan, where are we at with like having the conversations with politicians and stuff? Are they talking about it? Are they voting on it? Are we like logistics and taxes, and where are we at with execution of something like this?
so politicians have been talking about it.
Okay.
And I see where they're coming from, but they are struggling with a bit of sticker shock where they saw the price tag, because as it stands, it is projected to cost somewhere between about 3.5 like $5 billion, like somewhere in that range. Someone came out with a crazy figure of like 7 or 8 billion, but it's nowhere near that.
Okay.
But the politicians have talked about it, but they mostly balked at the cost, and they didn't have an economic analysis study done yet.
Okay.
But I can say that one has been completed, and I can't give out the details on it specifically. They're planning to release it later.
Cool.
But I know they have one. And I mean, and I saw some of the numbers myself, and I mean, it's impressive. Like, the state should go into this. Like, imagine like increasing the state's economy by 10% with just one project.
Right, and that's what I was gonna say is like, I'm sure it's gonna cost a ton to do something like this, but like I'm sure the figures and projections of, I don't know, the rest of the economy for the city and how many people can now get poured into the city and contribute and stuff. I don't know.
I
what
mean,
the
like,
figures are like.
when you look at the return on investment per, especially for transportation projects, it's really outstanding, because I mean, the state is gun ho about adding lanes to the freeway. They're talking about widening I-15 from Salt Lake City to Farmington. Originally, they wanted to widen it to 22 lanes, like 11 lanes in each direction.
Oh, wow.
And people flipped out, myself included, and we're like, no, 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 no. And they backed off and they made it just one lane in each direction. The cost to the state will be almost $4 billion.
Really? Adding a lane from Salt Lake to Farmington cost $4 billion?
Yep.
Wow.
And so it would cost the state $4 billion. And they just kind of, and some of these people just kind of looked at it and they're like,
so I see where you're coming from now. You're saying, okay, if you guys are okay forking over cash to add a lane, you can fork over cash to get this Rio Grande plan going.
Well, yeah. And I mean, like, you even look at it, like, the full plan to, like, double track Front Runner, if they fully double tracked and electrified the Front Runner line, that would cost about $2 to $3 billion. And it would move more people. Because a lane of cars can only move about 1,500 to 2,000 cars per hour. There's an average of only one driver per vehicle. So you only can get 2,000 people per lane. And so on a 5-lane freeway, you're only moving 10,000 people an hour on average. While Front Runner, if you get the trains as long as they possibly can be, like 8 cars long, they can take 1,500 people a go. And then you run 4 of them at a time, you're already beating the freeway. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, you just look at these things and you're moving them in a much narrower space too. I mean, 2 tracks side by side is only about the width of 2 freeway lanes. You're moving way more people in less space. So, I mean, anyways, sorry, I'm getting way off track.
No, I love to hear your thoughts.
They look at these costs, but they don't realize the return on investment. For a freeway, your return on investment is between $1.25 and $2 per every dollar spent. You get to a transit project, especially a rail project, your returns in Utah specifically, on average, are about 5 to 6. So for every dollar we put in, it's about a $5 to $6 return on investment. So, we spend $5 billion on this project. The state's going to see $30 billion in benefits pour out of it, potentially. I'm like, and that's if we act on it. Because that's the other key part. When you make an improvement, you have to act on it. And that's something I also have to challenge Spanish Fork with. But in full honesty, all the cities in Utah need to do it. And that's why sometimes when people will point out and say, but I don't see the trains or the buses full, I'm like, that's because we have not utilized them fully.
Yeah.
When we put them in place, we have to up what can be built by them. And that also comes back to planning properly. When you have, the more dense an area is, the more it can not only sustain its own services, but it also can help the lower density areas not feel a tax burden as much, because they can generate more taxes that sustain them, but also subsidize the low density areas. Because right now we have this thing, the low density areas cannot sustain themselves, and they never have been able to. So it's up to the really dense areas too.
Right. Okay. Dang, this is so cool. I'm learning a ton, bro. This is great. Well, let's switch gears a little bit, get to know a little bit more about you and your thoughts on other things. What is your favorite place that you've eaten at here in Utah?
Oh my gosh, that's really hard. I'm like, you kind of have to go. My favorite place, I'm like, I had to say a Spanish favorite. It has to be Barry's.
Barry's, yeah, downtown Spanish Fork. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Barry's versus Glades in Spanish Fork.
Oh, jeez.
It sounds like Barry's if it's your favorite, but pros and cons.
What I like about Barry's is they have a lot more like seating options. I feel like you get a better deal for the food there. Nothing against Glades, but Glades also makes some high quality stuff too that I really like.
Yeah. Glades, you can't. Maybe they have like 1 or 2 tables outside or whatever. But it's crazy that they're doing so well and they're so delicious. But like you can't sit. You just gotta pull out. They don't have a drive-through. You have to like park, and it's interesting. But I love Glades, dude. I ate at Glades so much in high school. I haven't been in a long time. Been at Barry's a few times. Barry's great too. Mm-hmm. What about just your favorite place? Well, No, forget that. I'll edit that out. I'm editing that question out. Um, Tell me about your family. Tell me more about them.
Let's see. So I'm the youngest of 5 kids. Uh, all 5 of us were, well, all 5 of us came of age in Spanish Fork. So like some of them were born in other cities, like or had some or a couple years where they were in other cities. But realistically, we're Spanish Fork family through and through.
Awesome.
My grandparents graduated from Spanish Fork High, my parents did, and then all my siblings and I. So
Nice. 3 generations of Spanish
exactly.
4 high school grads, man. That's awesome.
Mhm. And then, I'm like, we're a good bunch. I'm like, we're most of us are in Utah. My one sister lives in Wisconsin, but I know deep down that she loves Utah more. So
Utah's the best. Okay.
exactly.
Tell me, who has inspired you the most in your life and why?
Well, that's hard. Okay, I would have to say my grandpa mostly. So my grandpa, this was after the diagnosis of being on the spectrum. He was a retired elementary school principal, and when they said he wouldn't learn to read, um, he would not accept that. He's like, he will learn to read, and so he set up like this little school in his study, to teach me how to read.
No way. That's so cute.
Yeah, I know, right? And it was just so funny because, and like, I love my grandpa, but he could be pretty stoic. And so like, but he was amazing. So he taught me how to read, and I just spent a lot of time there growing up. So like, I would help him out in the yard. And he was also like, he was a war veteran. So like, he fought in the Korean War. He didn't talk very much about it, but my older sister basically kind of wrote like she wrote a book detailing his experiences, and it was really cool. But like, he was just a great guy all around, and he was just very wise, and he had just a way of helping me like overcome challenges, and he just always supported me.
That's awesome. Okay. And does he still live in Spanish Fork?
So he passed away a few years ago, but I mean, it was after battling some health challenges and stuff. But I mean, he passed at 91, so like,
It's a
he
long
had lived a
life.
good long life,
great, yeah.
and he was a longtime Spanish Fork resident, of course,
Okay.
and huge BYU fan.
Nice.
And again, he was just very educated, but like, he was a community player, and he was always doing something for someone else.
I love that, man. That's very cool. What's one thing you wish people knew about you? If you could only communicate one thing,
Oh
what
my
would it be?
goodness. What did I wish people knew about me? I mean, that's in full honesty, that's why I broadcast so much that I'm on the spectrum. I'm like, because one, I like the shock factor one. I think it's hilarious. And people are like, you are? I'm like, yeah, totally. It's fantastic. Like, I have a whole month about me. It's April, but
Let's go.
yeah. But I think it's just that. And so I'm like, if I ever just like act weird, or like I get like really tense about something, that's why I let people know is, and it's also because I'm not ashamed of it. And so I'm like, people might as well just know, and it doesn't hurt anything really. So
Love that.
I think that's what I would say.
Okay. What's a piece of advice you've received before that's really stuck with you and changed your life?
Let's see. So on my mission, oh my God, I'm even trying to remember how it was worded. We were always, since a lot of us were like battling different health issues, like, it was really easy to like get down on ourselves, but like, we always tried to find something that we liked about ourselves, or about our service, or what we were doing, and also like what we could do better. I'm like, find the best thing, improve the good thing, stand firm against the bad thing.
Okay.
And so I mean, I don't think that's the right way to put it, but one of the missionaries told me that, and it's always stayed with me. And so, I mean,
So what were the three things again? There was
it was appreciate the best thing, improve the good thing, stand firm against the bad thing. And I just can't remember who said it though, but I served with so many people, it's kind of hard to keep track. So,
yeah. You
but,
were you there longer than most too?
oh
Did you
yeah.
see all the people come and go?
And so, I mean, oh, for real, I'm like, when I went to my mission reunion, just the people who were in the years that I was there, there's about, I would dare say, about 200 missionaries.
Wow.
So, I mean, our reunions can be pretty big.
Dope. Okay. Well, that's great. That's great advice. So you mentioned, your mission and the church and stuff. Tell me how faith has played a role and impacted your life.
I mean, I've always had to have had faith at different like points in my life because I mean like it just like again it comes back to being on the spectrum. Like there have been times where I felt like really alone in the world, but like it was like faith that kept me kind of going forward because I'm like there's got to be something better than this. There is someone out there who understands and like and like it's just so funny because like people are like why are you so stubborn about some things? I'm like because I know there's something better. I'm like there's something better and we haven't found it yet. I'm like and that's why I'm so persistent and just like I won't let something go unless I feel like it's the best I can do.
I like that. If you didn't have to worry about money, I know you're talking about how much you like your job and everything, but if you didn't have to worry about money, what would you do every day?
So I mean like in my free time again, the city planning stuff, like I use a 3D modeling app to
Oh, cool.
like basically plan what I would want my dream city to look like. And I'm like, if I ever could and if I had the money, I would build a city of my own
Mm,
according to the standards I think it should have
nice.
and everything. So
I'll move to
something like that.
Sawyerville, bro.
Just
I'll be there.
and I'm sure plenty of people be like, "Oh, that looks dystopian," and so does your parking garages. I'm like your sprawling strip malls. I'm like, should I continue?
Bro, maybe I'll move to Sawyerville and I'll build a bunch of single family homes all over
No,
the place and make it low density.
just no. And I mean, okay, I have to address that too. I'm like, we should just have a mix of housing. Like every city should have a rich variety of the type of housing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, like, and it's so sad because really, like, you look at like historical like American and European cities, and they all had like these rich varieties of housing types. Like, you had like cottage courts, like these little houses that all faced like a courtyard, and like everyone took care of it and stuff, and it was walkable. And then you have like townhomes, and I know a lot of people right now are hating on townhomes and such, but really like they are a serious answer to like our affordable housing problem, especially here in Utah. The cities that are who are getting the best handle on their affordable housing issues, like Minneapolis and Denver, even Salt Lake City now, they are cities who are dominantly pushing for medium and high density housing. The majority of the housing in those cities are townhomes and buildings with 5 or more apartments in them. Salt Lake City last year saw its rents decrease by over 6%.
Oh.
It's because they've put so much emphasis and so much energy into building multi-unit residential developments that it is starting to bring the prices back down. And that's our best answer. So again, I'm like, went off on that whole spiel. But
No, I
like,
love it.
everyone should have access to the type of housing they want. It's all about providing a variety. And that's the purpose of a free market. A free market is supposed to provide a variety of options for something. It shouldn't be so dominated by one thing or just companies providing one product. So when we don't have enough transportation options, we have poor development. poor development leads to worse transportation options. They just feed each other endlessly.
I love that. So I know you're a very humble guy, but I want you to tell me what you think one of your greatest accomplishments in your life has been so far.
Oh my goodness. Greatest accomplishment. I would say my mission. I think my mission like really changed kind of my mission changed my outlook on life. Introduced me to a lot of great people. Um, and gave me just skills that I can use like in my everyday life. I mean, I just can't think of I mean, like I graduated high school and I mean that wasn't expected of me when I was younger. But I mean,
Yeah,
my mission was especially unexpected and the way that it went was nothing short of miraculous. So I would have to say my mission.
I love that. Okay.
I just want to say I'm perfectly happy basically being the equivalent of Lisa Simpson in Spanish Fork. How in The Simpsons she was always the outspoken progressive voice and everything. And I just want to make it clear that I don't really follow party lines. I just want to do what is right and what's logical and whatnot. And so it's funny, like when people get so mad at me when I suggest some things, and I'm like, you realize this doesn't make me like go quiet, right? Like
Yeah.
I just sit here and I mean, if someone can make an actual like factual argument with me, I can appreciate it. Like
Sure.
I'm like, okay, I'm like, I see where you're coming from with this. Like, cool, like let's just have a respectable conversation. But when they freak out and they're like calling me names or saying they're like, oh, you're a communist, you're a socialist, and I'm just like, where did I say that
Well,
here?
and the
Like,
internet provides a perfect place for those type of interactions to happen,
oh,
right?
I
And
know
so you already know
exactly,
Facebook.
and that's me. I'm like, and even some of the time, that's all the reason why I put my opinion out there is because I'm like, let's see who these people really are,
Yeah,
or if they're
that's
prepared for this, and they're really not. And I mean, as a person on the spectrum, as someone who loves a routine, I can understand why people are really hesitant about change. But I also know that change is one an unstoppable force, and it will happen whether we like it or not. But it's natural, and it's good for things to change over time. Even nature does it. When people are like, just leave it alone, just leave it be. I'm like, it changes. I'm like, nature can't stay the same all the time either, and
yeah.
it never will.
What are the odds like would you want to at some point in your life work in Spanish Fork city government either as an elected official or as I don't know, would you want to work in
Oh
the
yeah,
government and help in that area?
I think so. I mean, when I was a senior in high school, I was like thinking I wanted to go work like in the federal government. But considering how that's all gone down over the last several years, that's a huge no for me. But local, I feel like you have more options there. And like that's the other thing I want people to understand. I mean, if they really want change in their community, they need to speak up. They
Well,
need
yeah,
to
and
appear
the
at
biggest
meetings.
impact for sure,
Yeah,
right?
and I'm like, it takes so long for things to work through upper government. I'm like, your local government can accomplish a lot of things pretty quick, and like, especially like in Spanish Fork, and I get flack for this too, I'm sure, because people are like, ah, he's just a brown noser. He's friends with them, and I'm like, you know what? They are my friends. I'm like, I trust them. I'm like, most of them basically come from like the same backgrounds as us. I'm like, they're all like they were either born and raised or they came here looking for a better life. I
Sure.
mean, how can you hold that against people?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you need to talk to them. And I'm like, be nice. I'm like, you don't have to sit there and scream or chew their head off and find something to blame them for. I'm like, it's just the way some things like over the last couple of years I've seen people like throw at like different levels of government and just blame them. I'm like, that kind of sounds like just like a poor personal choice, not their fault. They're like, well, if they hadn't built these things across the street, the children wouldn't need to cross the street there. I'm like, so, um, I'm like, so The problem is they built something over there, and then your child wants to cross the street, and you didn't teach your child what to do about crossing a street safely. And then they get mad because they're like, "Well, now you're guilt tripping us." I'm like, "No, no, Susan, I'm not. I'm not guilt tripping you. I'm just saying that's stretching it." I'm like, "Really far?"
And that's a generic Susan. There's not a specific Susan out there he's targeting, all right?
Exactly.
We're not naming names.
No, no, no.
So I don't know if you have looked into this much, or I don't know if you have an opinion on this, but what city would you say is the best and the worst when it comes to city design and city planning, like looking to the future? In Utah, best
Oh,
and
yeah.
worst.
Okay, Salt Lake City, I think has to be the best, but that's because they're very forward thinking in that realm, and they're doing things like they're streamlining um, the development process for developers coming in. They're um, they're cutting red tape in just certain areas, and they're allowing a lot more innovation in the building of housing, and they're embracing transit a lot faster than most of the other cities in the state, and they're upzoning in critical areas where that transit is. So I mean, they're just leaps and bounds ahead of many of the cities, but a lot of the cities are catching up, and I will give them credit. Again, a lot of it happened when they built the tracks lines and the front runner line. A lot of the cities were not required to change their zoning and how to develop around those lines. So the development just ended up being really poor. And so people also associated that with the tracks lines, unfortunately. So they're like, oh, it brings crime. No, poor development and a lack of services breeds crime. They're like, oh, the trains are empty. The trains aren't empty. They just don't have people from that station because the station has nothing around it. Having a giant sprawling parking lot at a train station does not make it a worthwhile train station. You have stations in downtown Salt Lake City that have thousands of riders a day, but it's because they're next to office buildings, malls, shopping, restaurants. I'm like, the whole world sits there um, at people's disposal, basically. It is a superpower. Urban areas are humanity's superpowers. We live in cities because we want access to goods and services and other people and ideas and everything. So this whole idea of, but that's not what we want. I'm like, then why do we like these places so much? Why do we live in communities? And I mean, it's only going to get bigger. The majority of Utah, surprisingly, and people don't even think about this, Utah is the 6th most urbanized state in the country.
Interesting.
The majority of our population lives in cities of over 5,000 people. And if you split it even further and go to 20,000 people or more, the majority of us live in communities with more than 20,000 residents here. Utah is very urbanized. And I mean, there's still 5 states ahead of us. Mm-hmm. But it's because most of us live along the Wasatch Front. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that means that the majority of the state's economy is here, and it's still going to stay here. So we're going to keep growing. So I mean, it's inevitable, and burying our heads in the sand is never going to fix it. But as to the worst designed city, and I'm sure I could get plenty of flack for this, it's Orem.
Orem. Okay.
Orem is a city that I wish, if I personally could, I would demolish it and start all over again. And it's mostly because of just poor choices they make. And some of those streets that they have built are very unappealing to anyone who isn't in a car. And I mean, there's streets like that all over the state, but a lot of them are getting fixed or being changed up. And that's something I'm glad Utah is starting to do more of. They're embracing pedestrianization. They're doing more about cycling and transit usage on different roads. But Orem has had so many opportunities to do things, and then they don't. And then their traffic is terrible, and their housing options are terrible, and they wonder why they struggle and keep going back and forth between growth and shrinking and growth and shrinking. I'm like, it's because they're not planning right. Mm-hmm. And they had a plan too. They had a State Street plan where they would take State Street through Orem and turn it into a multi-use boulevard, and they were going to build something like 10 to 15,000 apartments along it, which would go a long way in helping with the state's housing crisis. And then they tossed it out because people are like, no, we don't want the apartments in our city, and these are people who don't even live along State Street. I'm like, these aren't people who even live like within half a mile of it. They're just people who they want to just drive through. They want to treat streets like highways. They just want neighbors who just live in the same house as them. Like, they are what we call NIMBYs, stands for not in my backyard. And they are the people that I love to argue with the most, because in all actuality, it's just a resistance to change. It's a resistance to the things that they aren't familiar with. And when it comes down to it, and this is going to sound really mean or whatever, but I'm like, a city is practically a living organism. It's going to change. And trying to hold back that change does more harm than good. I'm like, and if you don't like the change, move. I'm like, there's places all over this country that they could move to, like tiny towns in the Midwest. There's tiny towns deep in the mountains all over. I'm like, move. I'm like, if you truly love your community, you're going to stand by it no matter what. So just see them sit here and be like, I don't want it to change because I want it to look like the day I was born. We're long past that, buddy. I'm like, we're been long past that for years. And so I just mean, it's better to embrace change than be its enemy or try and be its stumbling block.
Well, Sawyer, you're a beast, bro. I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your thoughts, helping us all know more about you, a person of Utah with big opinions on the direction of Utah, man. It's been great. And I appreciate you also filtering yourself and not letting my show get canceled, because I know you're very capable of that, bro. You're
Just me, bitch. Just me.
You're the best, man. I appreciate you. Thanks for coming. It was great getting to know you and sharing it with everybody else.
Thanks so much, James. This was great.
Awesome, man.